opaque, I'm going to use the Liquid Sculpey. The first step is to get your wire ready. Here I've got some wire that is 22 gauge. 20 would also work. I found this at Walmart. That would work as well. And then, so this will be for my thicker wire. So I need 2 gauges of wire. And then for my thinner wire, this time I'm just going to use this 26 gauge coppery color. So my first step is to use the wire smoothers and to pull on the wire so I can get a nice smooth section like that. And then this is just going to go right here, so it really doesn't even have to be that big. So I'm just going to clip it, measure about where I want it, and you always extend it a bit because you're going to be holding it in place with some clay. And on this side, you'll want space to be able to wrap the wires together and then also to insert into your doll. So I'm just going to be adhering this to the board with some old scrap clay that I have that's just kind of dirty stuff, and then I'll be putting in the rest of the wires. Alright, now I'm doing the last wire of this set. I just thought I'd show you how I use it on the smaller wire too. Just drag, pull and drag. On the thinner wires it really works easily. Now this pattern actually is a bit of a straight line, so what you can do if you want it to be straighter, just go a little slower. There it is. Alright, and then to make them stick, what I usually do is get a piece of scrap clay and I make it out into a little snake, and then I take one of my X-Acto knives and then just slice it into a bunch of little tiny bits. Let's do it over here where you can see. And then I just use these to get the clay to stick to the board. So anyway, I'll start with this bottom one. The main thing you're looking for is that along the pattern it's lining up pretty well with the line below. On this one I'm just going to bend it a little bit while holding it flat. It's not going to matter too much because this kind of wing is pretty flexible. You can shape it however you want it to be. Okay, so that's how I do that. Always remember to leave plenty of wire on both ends. So it's always better to have too much wire than not enough. Now some of these wires are lifting quite a bit already, so what that tells me is I'm going to need to use some of the Sculpey already to help them stay in place. Alright, some of these are kind of funny shaped, and so what you do is just hold the wire flat and then bend it with your fingers a bit, like this. Sometimes if you over bend it, then it will kind of snap back to not quite as deep as a bend, but more like the shape that you wanted. And if they keep coming up, use a bigger chunk of clay to hold it down. So like that. And there we go. And now the second one in, you could do it with the top one. I usually just like the second one. This is the one that's going to go into the doll. So I'm going to kind of bend that a little bit that way. And then do the same thing. Remember, the pattern below is just really a guide. If it's not exact on there, it's not a problem. These are all so unique anyway. Alright, then our last one is here. This is probably the hardest part of the whole thing. Just getting the wires in place, getting them to hold still, lay how you want. Okay, now with my fingers I just kind of wiggled that one around, and this one is definitely a poker-upper. So we'll have to help it along. And what I'm going to do to hold that in place is usually I use a chopstick or just any wooden dowel, which for some reason I'm not seeing right now. But anyway, the idea is that as I put the liquid Sculpey down here, I will put just a little bit and then bake that, so that's going to hold it all in place and keep it away from my dowel. And then this side will be down, and then I'll do the same thing over here. That way the wire will stay in place. Alright, found my dowel, which is good because I needed that. There, I want that to kind of go down a little bit. So then I'm going to put a little bit of the liquid Sculpey here. There we go. And what I want to do is keep this rather thin so it will blend in easily to the rest of the Sculpey we'll add. So this is how I do that with a little paintbrush. And then now I want to make sure, if you move it a bit like I just did, just scooch it back into place. I want to be able to lift my fingers up high enough so I don't burn them as well. See how that stays in place now? I can just finish up the rest like that, and I'm going to have to keep holding this one down because it keeps bouncing up. These others are fine, so I'll just do that the regular way, but that's how you fix your bouncy wires. Alright, now, like I said, if you want your wings to be more clear, less milky, do the same process with the Fimo gel instead. And what I'm doing now is I've put some of the liquid Sculpey here on this little tray that I can mix with the coloring that I want. And I'm going to use a little bit of just the regular gold, I think a little bit of gold sparkle. You just do whatever your heart desires. And then what we're going to do is just paint this on. You don't want it super thin because it's got to be able to adhere to the wire. You can kind of feather it off down at the bottom if you'd like that to be thinner, but you want to do nice and thick so it's at least the thickness of the wire. So basically you just paint in from what you see below, just fill in that pattern. That's why I say you can also change the pattern however you want, just using it as a base, and then, you know, just do whatever you want with your paintbrush up here. Whatever strikes your fancy. So I'm going to put this a little bit thicker. What holds this all together is this wire, so you want it to be definitely thick enough to really have a good adherence to that. Got a stray hair there. You can also use this blue tape if your wires keep popping up. I had trouble with one of them because the clay piece got baked, and so I wasn't holding it tight anymore. Okay, and then since I want this one to have some little streaks of pink in it too, what I'm going to do is take this crimson, take a smaller brush, and I'm just going to move over here to grab more of this liquid Sculpey. Mixing it in together. Okay, that's going to be pretty dark, so I'll use it very sparingly. Okay, and I can tell already that's not quite thick enough, so I'm going to need to add more, but this gives you the idea. Let's see if you can see what I'm doing here. You just kind of drag it through till there's like some streaks going on, because it looks pretty. Okay, so that's good. And now I'm going to add a little bit more of the pink to it, just for fun. So you can do it however you want. And this is what I do just to get those little streaks going through it. And then, once you've done all of them, you can stick this right in the oven for, I think it's about 15 minutes or so. Just whatever the package says. You can just bake this whole thing right in there. I don't know how well the blue tape will do, so you might want to pull that off. And you definitely wouldn't want your pattern underneath to go in the oven with you. So you'd remove that, just have only bakeable items on there. Alright, so I filled in the rest with the gold, and now I'm just going to use the pinkish crimson color and to make my little stripes on each one this way. And this is where you really can just go crazy with your artistic flair. I know a lot of you are painters or have already done a lot of different art, and so you can kind of bring some of that into your work here. So just notice that as it bakes, the colors do darken a bit. That's because the Sculpey will get a bit more transparent, and so this coloring is going to show up more. I'm just showing you kind of a quick version here. You could take hours on these if you wanted to, but the nice part too is that you can do them pretty simply and quickly. Now you want to notice how on some of these it goes outside the line, and that's totally fine because you can trim them when you're done, when everything's baked. So you just want to really make sure that it's over that wire. Alright, so here it is out from the oven. It is warm to the touch, but not anything that would burn you. So that's what you look for. Don't let it cool all the way because it will be harder to take off. So then I just pull off these little guys. If the liquid clay touches them, then they kind of stick to it. And I like to cut my ends short. That also helps me remember which end is which. So again, I'll just use my X-Acto knife to help pry it up. I like to leave them in the order that they were so I can remember how to put the wing bouquet together. And then any of the edges that you don't like how they turned out, you can just take some scissors and clip them up. That one's really on there, so I just gave it a twist. Clip the end. You always want to just pull gently because this stuff is pretty fragile and you don't want it to break, so just be gentle. If you want to leave these ends, curl them or something, you're welcome to do that too. Now I'm just gonna take, I really should use some like really small scissors, but I can't find mine. I'd like to blame it on my 2-year-old, but it was probably me who just lost it. So I'm just, these little pieces that kind of were just little strings of the clay. And then like this one, I like how it kind of is fluted at the end there. So I'm gonna go ahead and leave that on there. All right, now comes the fun part. The wings are trimmed. You take your one that has the thicker wire. That's gonna be what you're wrapping everything else around. Looks like I've got a little bit of clay still stuck to it. So for each one, you're just gonna take it and wrap it around. And I at first just used my fingers. If you wanted to use your needle nose pliers for that, you could, but it's not really necessary yet. I'm gonna give this one a little bit of a bend. And just however you want to layer them, like I could have even done that first one behind the main wire if I wanted to. That's how you would use the needle nose. Just get them nice and tight. But see, even as they're on there, you can kind of arrange them. Just give them different levels and more dimension. Wrap a couple around. Then here's my last little one. It's gonna go down here. All right, so once you have them all wrapped around the main wire, it kind of looks messy like that. So, you know, you take your needle nose and just give them a good twist. Keep that around. And then I've already twisted it previously, so then you just take some wire cutters and clip those away. And then you want to measure this into your doll and see how deep you want it. I'm going to guess it'll be about like this though. Some micro beads and Fabri-Tac glue. And this is just to cover the ends. If you've seen my other wing videos, you know where we're headed here. I think before I actually do that, I'm going to just shape it a little bit. You can twist these however you want, spread them further apart, keep them closer together. You could add more, like you could put 2 together, like 2 sets of these wings, so you actually end up with 10 of these little petals on there. That would look pretty amazing as well. But what we're going to do is just put a little bit of glue over this pile of wires here because it's not very pretty. Somehow that one wing is kind of in the way, but it'll be okay. Alright, and then get that out of the way too. You just put it down into the beads. And then give it a little pinch, and as it dries it'll get firmer, and I'll, you know, pinch it up again then too. But that way we know where we're headed with it. So that's what she looks like. cute little flowery wing. So that is how your little wing will look. Then you can just adjust these however you want. This other side is going to be shinier because it was against the glass. So it's like a flower-like wing bouquet. Alright, so here's the second one. And on this one I decided to take the glue up a little bit because I like, from this way it kind of looks like the bottom of a flower, so I thought that was kind of cool looking. So I'll probably end up doing the same thing with this side too, just so they're symmetrical that way. And that's just another option you have. If you want to get really fancy, you could then put a layer of triple thick on top of it. This is a thick gloss glaze that works really well with the polymer clay. You could use that and paint each of these. And if I were going to do something like that, I would probably put the wing, you can put your wing into a hemostat like this. That way you can just lay it on the table and let it dry if you've decided to go through and paint all this with some of the triple thick gloss. So there you go. That's how you make the wing bouquet wings. There's lots of possibilities. Doubling them together is a very nice dramatic look. Like you could do 10 of these, like if we had just put these together as one wing. There you go. I mean, that would look pretty cool too. So that's how it would look doubled if you wanted to do that and give your fairy lots of wing. And also this is a good way to make a flower if you ever wanted to do that as well.